this is Cesar Chavez again. I'm going to talk to you guys about the Wade Hoggs, or whatever lipped gill bait you're choosing to use. My bait, the Wade Hoggs, it wakes and cranks down. Wakes on the slower retrieve, cranks down a few feet with these standard ST36 1/0 hooks. So when I'm fishing gill baits, I really pay attention to the forage. I don't know how other guys do it with swim baits. I know they're expensive and you can't have a bunch, but I've said it with rats. It's not a novelty bait. Really check out what you got going. Go, have a couple things: shad base, shiner base, bait fish, gill. It's a bigger carp bait. This is sometimes too big for a lot of guys. It's 5 ounces. Just a little shiner bait. You'll probably see next year. But assess the situation. If you're around clouds of shiner, you might not want to throw this. You'll get bites, most likely, but maybe like a shad if you have a shad pattern, or even the profile might be enough if you have larger shad. But so with gill baits, a lot of guys start throwing these in the spring. I'll throw it some in the spring, but in the spring I'm usually not throwing this bait. I'm throwing bigger stuff because the forage is larger, the bigger fish are up. I've got some really big fish on this in the spring, but it's not my number one go-to. I really go to this in the post-spawn. From the post-spawn all the way until fall, early fall, I've noticed that they get off or they don't commit as well past early fall. They still get the fish out, but they don't eat it, or they don't eat it here. So I kind of shy away and I move back to this in the fall. But I've caught some really, really large fish on these gill wakes before those other baits that I tried, or shapes and sizes that I've tried. And I lost a lot of fish, I think, because they're big and bulky with smaller hooks. So that's why the Wade Hoggs was built. No fins. It's fat, but it's kind of skinnier profile this way. I think Matt Allen talked about it in his swim bait video. I actually seen that, and he was talking about gill profiles being too big, and I agree. Sometimes you can lose fish because it's too round, or it's something about the gill profile that they don't get all the way down. So that's why it's shaped like this. Other gill wakes are shaped like this that guys make. Black Dog or Hiroshima or Big Game Customs, or whoever else has a gill wake. I know there's more than a few out there, but I think that's important because the fish needs to inhale this thing. So when I'm fishing the Wade Hoggs, I primarily am fishing around bluegill habitat. So I'm going to pitch it into a lot of shade pockets, like where you would some people throw a frog, and just let it sit there and just twitch it. And just give it small twitches. I like having a build bait instead of a lipless bait for that, because it stops forward motion. When you're trying to twitch stuff, you have to be real light, and sometimes it'll pull the bait forward. With the lipped bait, you could really walk it in place. So I liked lip baits, even if I'm just twitching the bait or walking the bait in place, because it really lets it allows it to stay in place. I don't pop them hard like some guys where they splash. I really just twitch it so it just turns and makes a little knock and kind of just waves on the surface. That's a really good technique. Getting it back in there. If you can get it out, if you can't get it out, I do it sometimes, but sometimes I know I'm not going to get the fish out. I should have thrown a frog, but this will get bites when a frog won't, for whatever reason, even though it has the hanging trebles, or if they're swirling on a frog. I'll pitch this in here, and those swirls will catch these round bin hooks. When they're swirling, I think a round bin is a better choice than, say, these bins like this, like the KVD, or I don't know what that's called, what style it is, but this is ST46. I like the round bins for the swipers, because it gets it on their face. But if I'm not pitching it in pockets, doing everything with this bait. I think this is an excellent wake bait for shallow cover. I've got my biggest bites waking it over shallow cover, where the fish, I think, are sitting at the base of the cover. And sometimes bluegills get lazy and float up to the surface, maybe. Not sure. But they really crush it on top. And they really don't miss it, it seems like, when it's on top or within a foot of the surface. If it's not windy, if it's real windy, this gets lost. I think any smaller bait does. If I'm throwing a wake and it's really windy, I want a larger profile that's going to stand out more, make more noise, kind of like this carp. But with anything other than like big chop, if there's a ripple, any type of wind, I'm going to be waking this first. I always wake this first over shallow cover. If I'm not getting the bites, then I'll start to bring it down, bang it into weed. But I'm always pausing it. Even when I'm cranking it down, I'll be pausing it, and then I'll go from burning to slow rolling it. Try everything, because some days they eat it when you're smoking it, and some days they eating it when you're waking it. You know, it varies sometimes hour to hour, I think, or really it can vary from location to location or spot to spot, because sometimes you're fishing, you know, a 2-foot flat, or maybe you're fishing a drop off with a shade pocket and it's real steep, and you can apply a different technique. So don't get caught up. I never try to get caught up in a pattern of these swim bait fish, as in technique. I'm always switching it up, trying to see what they like. So when I do start cranking it down in the weeds, it's usually short cranks down with pauses, because you kind of got to bounce it through. These Wade Hoggs and buoyant baits are kind of like square bills where they'll just smash through cover. Like I never snag this thing. You know, relatively speaking. It comes over toolies, it does the flip. It's wide, so it pushes things out of the way, like vertical weeds or toolies that are hard. It pushes them right out of the way of the trebles. It's an awesome bait for that. I think it's one of the best baits. A gill wake bait, crank down, is one of the best baits for shallow cover and being weedless and banging into stuff. Like wood, if I'm banging into wood, and to wood especially, I really want to throw this. Rocks, I get more bites on this. Just honestly, when I'm fishing riprap or rock cover, I get more bites on the waking crank. With the Wade Hoggs, wood and weeds seems to be its sweet spot. So that's really where I'm getting it. I'll crank it down. A lot of times when I crank it down, like a steady crank down, like a square bill, and I'm not banging cover, I'll just be swimming it. I've said it before, I think sometimes they come down on it, and I lose some fish. But I also don't get any bites unless I'm doing it some days. So it's worth it. But I think they get it from the top and they miss it. So I try not to get it too deep under the fish. I think getting it under the fish on a wake style bait, like it's a gill style bait, it's bad for hookups. On this bait, I haven't noticed it. So, and also, this is the only wake bait, maybe style wake bait, I don't throw anything else, but that when it's dead flat, I've actually got fish to go on this. Wakes, I never get bites when it's flat, but it seems like these gill wakes, you could just creep over the surface, like just barely reel them. No shade or nothing. And I started doing it this year because I'm stubborn and I love fishing this bait, and I didn't want to put it down, so I just was trying it, and I actually started to catch a lot of fish. I didn't get any real big fish, but I definitely got some larger fish that were better than I was getting any other way, 4 to 5 pounds. So this is the one wake that I'll do that with on the surface. Just barely reel it when it's, glass calm, clear water, whatever it is. They come up and smoke this gill bait. So when you're fishing the gills, I think it's important to make sure there's gills present. Super accurate casts, just like I was saying with the waking crank. And vary it up, because bluegills can be spastic. Sometimes you see them, they're just hanging out, suspending, like milling around. And then sometimes you'll see them darting out of stuff. And when I'm really around the gills earlier this year, there was gills everywhere. We were catching gillfish, and it was the first time I seen it. It was clear water. I was trolling. I was trying to stay shallow and cast out over a flat. My trolling motor spooked a bluegill. The bluegill took off, and like a 6-pounder came out of nowhere, like a foot of water behind a weed clump. I was right over the top of it. Didn't know it was there, and just shot out and smoked that gill. Moved 6-7 feet before that gill had a chance, and just crushed it. And that's with a boat over the top of it, and the gill taking off at 100 miles an hour. That triggered that fish to eat. So with gills, I think it's definitely important to try erratic things. If they're not eating on the steady, definitely burn it. It's hard to reel, but reel it fast. Also, throwing it on the 5-3 to 1. 5-3 to 1 is very important, I think, for these lift baits. It keeps me slower. On the wake especially, you really want to try to keep it as slow as you can, and the larger bites will come. In all my experience, and guys, just creeping that thing is when you're really going to get the biggies to come up. The rod that I throw it on is this 8'3" Maverick Spiralite. It's the 30-ton. It goes for $119. You can't beat it with the full EVA foam grip. It's 8'3". I like that length for this style. It's the 30 ton, so it has a slower bend to it, and it just matches up perfect with these 4 to 7 ounce hard baits. Glides, it's a really nice glide rod too, but I really love it for this and also this larger weight. But it's money for this weight. The 8'3" Maverick series with Spiralite. You can't beat it for $120. Wrapped guides, quality components. We put it through the ringer. It handles more than it's rated for. It puts fish in the boat. It has a great bend to it. I mean, I wouldn't risk losing fish if it wasn't a super great product. So, anyways, that's my Wade Hoggs. I think it's coming to the end of the season now when this video is coming up. But all this information that I'm giving kind of pertains to all gill baits. Oh, one more thing. With gill baits and big bites, I think big bites in general it's a rule, but overhead cover. Fish overhead cover like big fish, really like overhead cover. But my largest bites, if there's a canopy to be had, gill baits will pull them out and get the bites, or they have for me. Especially in the warmer months. Late summer is the best time to throw this. Don't be fooled about the gills in spring. Late summer, giants. But overhead cover, any canopy you can find. Shade pocket's nice. Something floating on top, trash, hyacinth, pennywort, laid down tulies, weed mats, whatever you have, docks in your thing, especially an isolated dock, away from everything. Some launch ramps will have erosion under the concrete, and they'll sit right under that little ledge on the side of a launch ramp. I've seen it at a lot of lakes. You'll see the launch ramp come down, and the concrete will have kind of an undercut. They come out of those undercuts on those launch ramps and just crush gill baits. I'm getting excited because I've seen it happen with some big ones, and it's really fun. So think outside the box. Throw this like wherever you can. If there's shallow cover, in the warmer months, you can't beat this, especially if there's overhead canopies. So thanks for checking me out. Check out SpiraliteRods.com. Check out SwimBaitUnderground.com. I always forget to shout out the homies. Swimbait Universe on Facebook. Manny Chi, he always has some funny stuff on his page. There's a lot of guys just stay in the loop, taking as much information as you can, and just get out there and throw these things. Thanks a lot.